Well, this is another busy week as we continue to make progress on our agenda for the American people. Today, the House continues to act on legislation to make sure that our law enforcement agencies have the support and the tools that they need to keep us safe. This week, of course, coincides with National Police Week, when we honor the sacrifices made by our police and their families. Yesterday, the House acted on a new round of sanctions against the Syrian regime in order to cut off resources for Assad's war machine. Also this week, the House approved landmark federal IT reform legislation that will reduce wasteful spending and enhance the government's information security. Will Hurd is really taking the lead on this, and he's trying to bring our government into the era of cloud computing, and this is a big, big mark forward in bipartisan progress in getting waste out of government. As we speak, the Ways and Means Committee is holding major hearing today on examining pro-growth tax reform. Pro-growth means just that: growth of wages, growth of jobs, growth of opportunity, and growth of our economy. Also this week, the Education and Workforce Committee unanimously approved bipartisan legislation to improve career and technical education. This will make it easier to connect people with the skills they need to get good-paying, in-demand jobs. I've got to tell you, wherever I go, in Wisconsin last week, we have a real skills gap between the skills people need to get good jobs and the good jobs that are out there being offered. This is something that we really have to address, and I'm very pleased that the Education and Workforce Committee is moving forward on this legislation. Later today, Armed Services Committee Chairman Mac Thornberry will unveil the third installment in his effort to streamline the Pentagon's bureaucracy and to improve the way that we develop weapons systems. This is an essential part of our efforts to rebuild our military for the 21st century. Ahead of Memorial Day, the Veterans Affairs Committee has approved 11 bills, including bipartisan legislation to fix the VA's broken appeals process. This is a problem that we've been working on tackling for years, and under Secretary Shulkin, the VA is already taking real strides to get our veterans better care, shorter lines, and more peace of mind. Over in the Senate, our colleagues continue to discuss the path forward on keeping our promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. And lastly, yesterday the President signed the 14th Congressional Review Act resolution to stop President Obama's last regulatory onslaught that he did last year. Up until this year, Congress had successfully just repealed one regulation under this law. Now, just this year already, we've done it 14 times in a matter of months. We have much more to do to end Washington's culture of overreach and overregulation, but this is a big promise kept as we work to protect jobs and to grow our economy. I know it's a long list. It is by no means complete. Every day here, we are working to advance our agenda and to address the problems that Americans face in their everyday lives. Questions? Phil.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, Senator McConnell said, well, we could do with a little less drama from the White House on a lot of things, saying basically it could undercut or hamper your agenda. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, yeah, it's always nice to have less drama. But the point I'm trying to make, and I tried to make this the other day at my press conference, people in the country need to know that we're busy at work trying to solve their problems. So I realize that there's a lot in the media these days. That doesn't seize up Congress. That doesn't stop us from doing our jobs to work on people's problems. One of the reasons why I just read you the list of just what we've done this week on closing the skill gap, on streamlining IT to get waste out of government, make the Pentagon more efficient, get tax reform moving. These are things that really affect people in their daily lives. We're working on this. And so I just think it's very important that people know that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And sure, drama is not helpful in getting things done, but we're still getting things done, and that's the important point. Yeah.
A number of congressional leaders met with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, here at the Capitol last night. Were you at that meeting, and what's your understanding about why DOJ took this step?
Well, I was at the meeting. I don't comment on such meetings that are classified. As I said before, I believe that the professionals at the Justice Department need to do their jobs independently, objectively, and thoroughly. And I believe the special counsel, which is Robert Mueller now, helps them do that.
Do you think it interferes with the congressional investigation?
No, it doesn't, actually. So we are going to keep these investigations going here. As I've always said, I think the intelligence committees are the right place to do that. This is an investigation involving Russia, involving another country interfering with our elections. And so the Intelligence Committee, in my opinion, is the best place for that. And so these bipartisan, bicameral investigations, House Intelligence Committee, Senate Intelligence Committee, are going to continue their investigations. Rachel.
You didn't mention oversight there. Do you think oversight should continue? And another follow-up on that, Oversight Chairman Jason Chaffetz has told people he's going to hold a public meeting around June 30th for Fox. Does that present a conflict?
I have not spoken to Jason about that, so I don't know. He has not told me that, so I have not spoken with the chairman about that.
If he's leaving, do you think that he should step aside?
I will bridge. I will find out from Chairman Chaffetz what he is doing or isn't doing. So I'm not going to comment on something that's in the media. I'd rather hear from him myself as to what his plans are. As far as the Oversight Committee, they've made document requests. That's the Oversight Committee's responsibility. That's what they do. That's why it's called the Oversight Committee. So it's perfectly appropriate that they make these document requests. But as I said, especially with response to intelligence, that's where I think the Intelligence Committee should do their jobs. Chad.
Thank you. Obviously, you've been very close over the years with Vice President Pence, and you talked about you're trying to continue to move this agenda, and he's here often working on these issues here. But considering the maelstrom that we've dealt with Trump and Russia the past few days, there have been some members who have said we might be better with Vice President Pence.
Oh,
What's
good
your-
grief.
what's your take on
We shouldn't even, I'm not even going to give credence to that. I'm not even going to comment on that.
It's your members who are
that's-
saying. There are
well,
some members who are saying.
I'm not even, there's not even point making a comment on that. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, does the appointment of a special counsel, you think, give you some breathing room now at least to go on this agenda?
Well, like I said, the appointment of the special counsel, I think, helps assure people and the Justice Department that they're going to go do their jobs independently and thoroughly, which is what we've called for all along. And so I think it was perfectly appropriate to do that. In the meantime, we're going to keep doing our jobs. We're going to keep our Russia investigations going with our intelligence committees. And look what I just described. Energy and, not the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Education Workforce Committee, closing the skills gap. Getting the Mac Thornberry and the Armed Services Committee, streamline the way the Pentagon procures weapons. Let's get Ways and Means working on tax reform. Let's fix people's problems, and all of our committees are still doing that. So, as I said, I know that people get consumed with the news of the day, but we are here working on people's problems every day, and we have all these different committees that do different jobs, and our job is to make sure that we still make progress for the American people, and we're doing that.
But look what you're being asked about.
Yeah, you want to ask about tax reform? Yeah. All right, yeah, go ahead, Mike Emanuel. Jeez, you'll get picked on if you say tax reform. All right, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Regarding tax reform, there's some folks who think it could slip beyond this year. Where are you? with
No,
that?
I don't think that's the case. Our goal, and I feel very confident we can meet this goal, is calendar year 2017 for tax reform. And I think we're making good progress. Does Bloomberg have a tax reform?
I do, actually. Senate Leader, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that he thinks the prospects for the border adjustment part of the plan are rather bleak in the Senate, and yet he still says that it should be revenue neutral. What are the alternatives being discussed, and is there a way that the border adjustment can either have a transition that would make it more palatable, or some kind of half border adjustment?
Yeah, so I think you can say yes to all of the above to what you just said. What we have to do, and as an old tax writer, I would say this is, you have to weigh alternatives off one another. It is obvious that you can and should have some kind of an adjustment and phase-in period if you're going to have a border adjustment. I obviously think border adjustment is the smart way to go. I think it makes the tax code the most internationally competitive of any other version we are looking at. And I think it removes all tax incentives for a firm to move overseas or to move their production overseas. But if you're not going to do border adjustment, then you have to look at the alternatives to that. There's always upsides and downsides to alternatives. That's the process we're going through right now. We're going through the process of looking at what is the best way to reform the tax code and to lower tax rates for businesses and to make the American tax system internationally competitive. Right now, it is literally one of the worst tax systems in the industrialized world. We're losing companies who are becoming foreign companies. We have an incentive that basically tells companies, outsource your manufacturing. Why on earth are we doing that? So we really believe, this is, again, we're working on this, fixing people's problems, and that is why tax reform is so critical. And I do believe that there are very serious and legitimate concerns to any version of tax reform, and we're going to have to accommodate those concerns as we move to a new tax system.
Last question.
Yeah.
Two questions, following up on Rachel's question. Can you talk more about, you talked about the Russia investigation. Can you talk about where the questions of Mr. Trump's relationship with Mr. Comey and potential obstruction of justice issues should fall? You said you want to get the facts on that. And then on healthcare, insurers are getting ready to set rates.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any possibility that whatever comes out of Congress will affect next year, or we're already looking 2 years down the road?
Well, I'll defer you to HHS on CSR payments. We have a deadline, I think Monday, if I'm not mistaken. We'll meet that deadline. We'll do a status report with the court. The House Republicans will. That issue is still unresolved. But I would have to defer you to Secretary Price on CSR payments.
But
So.
on the question of potential obstruction of justice.
Oh, yeah. Look, that's what investigations are for. You now have a special counsel who will take over that portfolio within the Justice Department. I think it's appropriate. The whole point is to have an independent investigation and follow the facts wherever they may lead. It is premature to prejudge anything at this point, only that we have a process in place. We have a process in place here in Congress, and the administration now has a process in place in the Justice Department. I'll just have to leave it at that. I'll leave it up to the committees to determine that. Thanks.